I first and foremost just want to say thank you so much for coming. Good evening, everyone. I really appreciate everyone being out here today and coming to one of Equality Arizona's town halls. So I'm super excited to have you two here, especially. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Shelby, and this is
KML.
And this is
Kara Janssen.
Kara. Cool. And I'm Shelby. I'm an organizer with Equality Arizona. Equality Arizona's mission is to build a strong and resilient LGBTQIA+ community in the state of Arizona through civic and political power. And with a really critical election just around the corner, the Maricopa County Attorney election, it's really important for us all to understand the current state of our criminal justice system and to grow the awareness that we all have of the innovative, people-centered solutions Arizona needs. There's a lot I can say about these people, but I think the best way to do it is just to get right into the questions. Just for your understanding, this is a town hall, and I've said the same thing every single time I do a town hall, which is there are 3 goals of this event. Well, I made it into 3 goals. It's called the 3 L's. Ooh, The first L is you'll learn from the experts, or what I consider experts, and you both should call yourself experts. You'll leave with the knowledge and understanding to do better for your own community. That's the second L. And then lastly, the last L is you'll lead these movements with us. So you'll lead these movements either with the ACLU, Equality Arizona, or any other awesome organization that exists in Arizona, because there's so many. So, all right. So, okay, we got into the questions.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to start, if it's okay with you, to talk a little bit about why we're talking about criminal justice reform at an LGBT organization.
Please do.
Event, because I think that's important before we get into the details of like MCAO and what they do and why that is important. And I'm going to pull up I have my handy dandy stats here. So, somewhere, here we go. Yeah. So a lot of people don't realize that the LGBT community is ridiculously overrepresented in the criminal justice system. Some of that's because of discrimination, and then discrimination leading to economic issues and things like that. But there's some really I knew that, and I was still surprised by some of this recent data that has come out. Gay, lesbian, and bisexual individuals, 2.25 times as likely to be arrested in the last year as straight individuals. So that's just one piece of data. In the juvenile justice system, things are potentially even compounded by the lack of family acceptance that a lot of young people face, which can lead to homelessness and other issues. But 20% of the youth in the juvenile justice system are LGBT, compared with 4 to 6% of the youth in the general population. In prisons and jails, so 1 in 3 women in prison identify as lesbian or bisexual. Another 8.8% report having sex with women but do not identify as lesbian or bisexual. So those are some pretty astonishing numbers. The data for transgender people is limited, but from what little we do know, you'll notice one of the statistics was LGBT people. The data is even worse for transgender people. And we also know that the LGBT population has about 2 to 3 times higher incidence of substance use disorder than the general population. And then that also leads directly into the criminal justice system, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So I just wanted to give a little bit of depressing background about why we are here and why this is an issue that everybody who is part of Equality Arizona might want to learn more about.
Absolutely. And thank you for giving those facts. I know this all relates right back to, it all intertwines. The county attorney has a lot of power and a lot of impact in the state of Arizona. If you don't mind answering, what power does the county attorney have, and what impact can the Maricopa County Attorney's Office leave on Arizonans themselves?
Yeah, so the most powerful actor in the criminal justice system, a lot of people think it's the judge because they're sitting there on that big podium with their fancy robe on. It is not the judge, it is the prosecutor. It is the prosecutor who decides who goes to prison and for how long. Unfortunately, the real world is not like Law and Order or other television shows that you might have enjoyed watching, because almost no one gets to go to trial. 95% of cases, approximately, are what we call plea bargains, in which the prosecutor oftentimes coerces the defendant to enter into what we call a plea bargain, in which they admit that they were guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. Sometimes a very, very, very dramatically reduced sentence. So dramatic, this trial penalty, as we lawyers call it, that oftentimes we even have innocent people pleading guilty because they are afraid to roll the dice and potentially spend the rest of their life in prison. And so they will take a deal of a few years in prison to avoid that astronomically high risk. And so, unfortunately, despite the fact that our Constitution says that you have a right to a trial by jury, in practice, that is not really the case. And it is the prosecutor, the head prosecutor, the Maricopa County Attorney in this case, for those of you who live in this area, who sets the policies of what plea bargains the prosecutors who work for them can and cannot give, what circumstances, life circumstances, other things that they think are going to be important in determining who gets a good deal and who doesn't. And I could go on and on, but I want to let Kara talk a little bit about her, experience having actually been prosecuted.
Yes, KM, you were absolutely right. It's nothing like Law and Order, and I used to watch that show all the time. Well, the first time I got in trouble, I went to jail. I had no idea what was going on. I was actually grand jury indicted, which means, can you give a little?
Yeah, so if you're accused of a felony, which all drug possession in this state, other than cannabis now, and prescription drugs, so if you don't have money to go to the doctor to get your drugs, it's a misdemeanor, but even if you're using them illegally. But all drug possession in the state is a felony, which is the most serious category of crimes. In order to charge you with a felony, the prosecutor can do it one of two ways. They either file something in court or they go to what's called a grand jury, which is made up of a group of citizens who sit there and they hear the evidence. But they only get to hear from the prosecutor, not anyone representing the person who's potentially going to be charged. And some of you may have heard about grand juries in the context of, for example, their failure to indict officers for misconduct. The joke, but it's not really funny, that lawyers say is that a prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich, meaning that it is not a high bar for them to get over, because in part there's no one else in the room besides them.
Thank you. Yeah. So, as a lot of people know, we have cash bail here. I was actually already on probation, so I couldn't get bonded out at this time anyways. But like you said, I would say 95% of the women in there with me had substance abuse issues or mental health issues. And yeah, I've been to jail a lot of times, and I've seen, I think, 3 people take their case to trial, and all 3 of them lost. So to us inside, like, why would you take that chance? Because they're just going to stack your charges and you're going to get an astronomical number, like 30 years versus like the 3 that they're offering you. The same thing about the coercion. The second time that I went, there's something that's called EDC court, early disposition court. So basically you go in, they give you a plea, and they tell you if you don't take it, when you come back, it's going to be substantially worse. Well, I didn't believe them. And I came back, and it was double what the original plea was. So we landed in the middle. And I can tell you that they prosecute for the silliest things. The second time, got 4 years for personal narcotic that I had with me. So because I had already been to prison on possession of narcotics, they basically doubled my time. So there's also a...
Wait, so I just want to make sure we're real clear for everyone. So you, and I know this because I've heard you tell your story before, you were struggling with substance use disorder.
Yes.
You had been gotten in trouble for possession, not sales, but just having your own personal supply of the drugs that you were using.
Yes.
And then you got in trouble a second time for the same thing because you still had an addiction issue. And they sent you to prison for 4 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I can tell you though, the first time it was possession, and they also charged me with transportation of a narcotic. So it was a little bit like...
Which literally just
More
means driving
things.
with it in your vehicle to get
Right.
it from
I
the
was
place
gonna
that you
say.
bought it to your home where you intend to use it.
Exactly. So there's that. But yes, I went back, and it's actually not, it's funny, but not funny. Prosecutors have the power to charge you whenever they want. There's a statute of limitations on things, obviously, but whenever they want. So both times that I've been to prison, I have been what they call page 2'd, which means that they bring up another charge, another felony. So the whole process starts all over. So I'm being prosecuted again, which means I have to go back to Maricopa County Jail, 4th Avenue, the whole intake process again, back into jail, going to court, literally months back in jail before I could go back to prison. Yay! I mean, who says yay to go back to prison? If anybody's been to Maricopa County Jail, you would know what I'm talking about. That's why people sign pleas also. They just want to get out of jail.
Because the jail is so bad that it's actually worse than the prison.
Exactly. The prison's like a camp compared to jail. So, and prosecutors know that. And it's funny because prosecutors and judges, even public defenders alike, they'll tell you when they're sentencing you, oh, you're going to go to this special unit and you're going to get help for your substance abuse and all these things. There is no such thing. And I think that these prosecutors and these defense attorneys and even the judge, I think that they really believe this, that there is some place that people like us go to get help. Well, that would mean the whole prison system, everybody in there. So the first time I went, I believed it. And I got there, I'm like, I don't feel like I'm special. There's a lot of people here. So it's a really corrupt system. Nobody talks to each other. And like Cam said, the prosecutor holds all of the cards. They decide whether to charge you or not. Like I said, I had to go back to jail for a shoplifting charge, a felony shoplifting charge. That's what they decided to bring me back to jail for. So, I mean, what are you really doing? Like, what was the point of that? So, in conclusion for me, the Maricopa County Attorney has all the power, and we need voters to know this, and we need all of you to go tell your folks, because I can't vote. I've lost my rights. I can't get them back until I pay my drug fines off. So after you go to prison for 4 years of your life, they also have thousands of dollars of fines that I have to pay for the drugs that I possessed. Not really sure how that works, but so that's why I'm out here talking to people and letting you know that this is really, really, really important and affects all of us, and it doesn't make our community safer. It tears families apart.
You lead right into, I wanted to stay on this topic of substance abuse, and I wanted to stay with, really introduce this not new, but one of the many things the ACLU is fighting for. You've worked tirelessly on spreading awareness on defelonization. And I would love for either of you to speak about what defelonization is and how does it relate to the topic that we just talked about, which comes to how people with substance abuse are constantly criminalized and end up back in the system because they weren't given the support they needed at first.
Sure. Well, I mean, first, I do want to distinguish between substance abuse, and substance use disorder, which are actually 3 different concepts that often get conflated. And from a harm reduction perspective, right, the goal is and should be helping people reduce the harms associated with using substances. And often the most egregious of those harms is prison. And the health consequences that come along with that. The Department of Health in Arizona has themselves found, after doing a lengthy examination of all of the people who died in 2020 of overdose, that one of the biggest things that the state can and should do to prevent overdose deaths is reduce the stigma associated with using drugs to help people get into treatment who need treatment. With that said, so currently, as I mentioned before, all drug possession of illegal drugs that are not prescribed is a felony. Broadly, crimes are divided into two categories. Misdemeanors are the less serious things that DUI or simple assault. If I were to shove Shelby, which I'm not going to, simple shoplifting, those things are misdemeanors. Felonies are the more serious crimes, and that's where you have things that you would have thought of as a crime as a child, like breaking into someone's house, burglary, murder, rape. Those things are all felonies. So having drug possession in the felony category makes no sense. Felonies have much higher what we call collateral consequences than misdemeanors do. So having any kind of criminal record can have an adverse impact on your life, on your ability to find a job, get housing, all those things. I'm sure Kara can talk more about that. So all criminal record has some collateral consequences, but felonies have much more. And so that is, a lot of the reason why we are trying to get the legislature to move simple possession of drugs, meaning you just have them for your own personal use, not selling, and make them misdemeanors instead of felonies. And that will make recovery easier and help reduce the stigma.
If we were able to do that, make drug possession misdemeanors, I would never have gone to prison if that was a thing already here. I think in other states it is. Oregon, I'm pretty sure they completely, what's the word?
Oregon is complete decriminalization, which means that drug possession is not a crime at all. It's like a civil infraction, like when you get a parking ticket and you get a fine, and you don't have to pay that fine if you go to treatment, and that they will help you find treatment. So that is not what we're talking about, the Oregon model. But in the last few years, 7 states have decided to change their laws and decriminalize, including both Utah and Oklahoma. Interesting. So I believe that Arizona can also make this change. Oklahoma. But Kara, if you want to talk a little bit about sort of the collateral consequences and how that has affected you, maybe.
Right. So it kind of just ties back what I talked about a little bit before, but I'll go into, like I said, going to prison does not make communities safer. It tears families apart. Since being home, the first time I came home from prison, I was very ashamed and didn't want anybody to know, and so I isolated and I relapsed pretty quickly, and I was back in prison within a year with new drug charges. So the second time I realized that I needed to do something. Obviously, I don't want to keep going back to prison, and I don't want to die on the streets, so obviously something has to change. So like KM pointed out, only about 2% of people are getting treatment inside.
And in fact, so in Arizona, through a ballot initiative, not the legislature, the public decided that they wanted to see, more treatment and less prison for people. And so they passed a ballot initiative that said your first and second charge for possession, you're not supposed to go to prison. You're supposed to get probation instead and maybe some treatment. Now, you're still branded with a felony record, which makes it exceptionally difficult to find an apartment, to find housing. I talked to one of Kara's volunteers the other day who has had a good job for years. She's been out of prison for years. It took her a year to find an apartment that would rent to her because she has a felony record. But when you're on probation, now you have to go to all of these meetings, and as Kara said, they expect you to find a job even though you have a felony record and all these different things. And if you don't have transportation, that becomes extremely difficult or impossible to make it to all of your meetings and back and forth to your job and everything else with the inadequate, transit that we have. Maybe your car got towed after when you were arrested, and now you can't get it back because you have to pay an outrageous amount to the towing company in order to get your car back. So all of these things compound, and we know, and if you ask any reputable professional who works in this area, that relapse is part of recovery. It's not just like I got in trouble and so now I'm gonna be completely drug free for the rest of my life. It doesn't work that way, right? Like, it's a process, and that takes time and compassionate support, as Kara said. And so a lot of times these diversion programs that the prosecutors talk about, that some people, they do help, but for other people it just ends up being a slow walk to prison because they're not getting the help that they really need. I mean, we really could talk all day about the prison system, but I do want to bring us back to the election since
I know, that was, I don't even want to go down the elections now.
Can I just point out, though, that yes, we need to get back to the elections, but these are the things that people need to hear, that voters need to hear, because the Maricopa County Attorney has the say on all of this, on who goes to prison.
Yeah. And the amount of discretion that they have is really hard to grasp for people, I think. And also just how Kara mentioned earlier the EDC courts, which were set up and intended to help people get to drug treatment more quickly. So there was this idea, allegedly, that these relatively simple drug cases, right, like you were in possession of the drug or you were not, would go through this court, and then people would not have to sit in jail for as long before they got to certain court dates and things, and they would be able to get treatment sooner. That is not remotely what the early disposition courts are now. There is a huge number of cases that go through them, including much more serious offenses than drug possession, which, as we already talked about, is itself a fairly serious offense in Arizona. We actually have a lawsuit right now based on exactly what Kara talked about, where that you are told that if you don't waive certain constitutional rights, that you will have a substantially harsher plea offer. And in addition to saying, you have to waive your rights, they don't give you any discovery. Discovery is what we lawyers call basically any information about your case, which makes it impossible for your defense attorney to fully advise you on the plea offer they're giving you because you don't know anything about the case against you. And we've seen cases where there was camera footage of the supposed robbery incident that the prosecutor apparently hadn't bothered to look at, didn't want to turn over before saying you have to make a decision about whether you're going to face, again, I don't remember the exact numbers, but 15 years in prison, or we'll give you this offer for a year. They don't have this evidence. We're able to finally get past that phase, find this video, and then the case gets dismissed. If that person had taken that deal, they'd be sitting there in prison for something that there was clear evidence that they didn't do. And some people are going to end up taking those deals because, they're worried about getting COVID. They're in a rat-infested jail. They're trying to get home to their family. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose their apartment, and then their family's going to be, without housing. And so it's a really scary thing. And, and a lot of folks have jobs where if they miss a day of work, that's it, they're fired, right?
Coming home, you have so many options. You're told what to do, when to do it, how to do it for years. And then you come home and there's all these options, and we'll go get a job and learn how to use the bus and try to get an apartment in this market where no one can get an apartment, plus you have felonies. So good luck. You're going to end up in a tent on the street because you can't get help. And when you can't get help, you go back to what you know. I mean, I'm a recovering addict. I'll always be an addict. I have to every day wake up and make the conscious decision to not use. And that's a real thing. So people are dying because they're coming home not getting the support that they need, and they think, oh, I can go back to using, and they one time and they overdose and they die. And it's so sad. I've seen it so many times out here. So that's another thing that, people are dying because of prisons and because of felony charges because of the Maricopa County Attorney. Literally, people are dying. So this race is like super important. We're at kind of a crossroads right now. And it's so important that we get the right person in office. Obviously, I can't tell you who to vote for.
But you can get more information about the candidates. So the ACLU, we have of Arizona, we have a Smart Justice campaign website. On that website, we have the results of our candidate survey that we sent out. Unfortunately, only one of the candidates answered a candidate survey. But you can find out her positions. There are 3 candidates. There were initially 3 Republicans running in the primary, and one of them dropped out. So there are 2 candidates in the Republican primary, which is August 2nd. And then there is only 1 candidate on the Democratic side, so she will be in the general election. And so, yeah, I would encourage folks to educate themselves. I think this was one of the questions that we sort of passed over, but you may have seen this in the news. But reproductive freedom is going to be on the ballot because the state of Arizona, so Roe versus Wade got overturned. I imagine everyone in this room is aware of that. So we no longer have a constitutional right in that area. And so state law then becomes super important. There is some debate right now over what exactly that state law is. But it is either a 15-week ban on abortion or a total ban on abortion. And one of the candidates, Julie Gunnagle, has said that she does not plan to enforce that ban as county attorney. The other 2 candidates, who are Gina Godby-Here and Rachel Mitchell, have said that they do plan to enforce the law. And then there has been a bunch of other media coverage on, the specifics of their statement, which I am sure you all can Google. So, this is a major distinction in the views of the candidates that I think, people may want to consider. As I said, the response that we did get to our candidate survey from Julie Gunnagle, you can find on our website, and it will show you her brief answers to our questions, as well as I think the full survey response. So yeah. I mean, so even though they did not answer our candidate survey, there is a candidate survey out there that Rachel Mitchell and Gina Godby-Here answered. So if folks are interested in hearing more of their own words about their positions, I would encourage them to Google it and pull up that candidate survey and take a look at it and form their opinions on that. I think we can say that both Gina Godby-Here and Rachel Mitchell have spent many years at working at MCAO. Rachel Mitchell is the current interim county attorney, and so she was appointed by the Board of Supervisors in the last a couple months ago. I've lost all sense of time post-pandemic, but when after Alistair Adele resigned, the Board of Supervisors then had the duty to appoint someone to fill that seat, and that they picked someone who was already working there.
Well, I know that it's 6 p.m. I don't want to keep anyone here any longer, and I know that we could chat about, and just in general. I could listen to you talk, Kara, for hours. You too, Cam, but Kara, I can really.
But like I said, the primary is August 2nd, so we'll know
Yes.
after that who the final two candidates are that are going to be
Mhm.
advancing to the November ballot. I would highly, highly encourage you to make sure that you are registered to vote, that and also the state legislative elections. We're not going to talk about that today, but also very important. And the redistricting just occurred, so you might be in a different legislative district now than you used to be. So go online, make sure that you're registered to vote, that who your candidates are going to be, what your new district is,
Mhm.
all of that great stuff. And if you want to vote by mail, you can make sure that you're signed up to get your ballot in the mail if that is your preference.
Yes.
And all of that fun stuff. So they even send you an I voted sticker if you vote by mail.
I got mine.
It's exciting.
So,
I wish I could get one.
I have another one.
Okay,
If you
I'll
want.
borrow it.
Okay.
Someday I'll get my own.
Yeah.
I also wanted to do a shout out to in the next few months until the general election, I will be out in the community doing what we call Drinks, Jams, Justice. I'll be in different legislative districts at different restaurants presenting about the power of the county attorney so that people in that district know. And when they go vote, they are actually educated about the issues and can make an informed decision, because a lot of times the county attorney box doesn't even get marked. So there's a big fall off rate. When we worked on this in 2020, just educating the public, we got a little sliver of that amount of drop hop to decrease. I know it was us. But that's really what we need, is to get out in the community, for you all to get out and tell your people, come to a Drink Jams Justice. They'll be on our website where they're going to be, what time. They're super fun. We provide food. You'll have to buy your own drinks. But other than that, it's really fun, and we can ask questions and just different environments. And that's what we're doing right now. And also tabling at events. If anybody knows of anything cool going on that we should be a part of, please let us know, because I love just showing up. There's been a lot of things at the rally, at the Capitol lately, rallies, Roe vs. Wade.
We were at the
all those
Rainbow
things.
Festival. That was really
yeah.
fun. So saw some of you
Yes.
there. And I would really encourage folks to also, if you care about criminal justice reform, which you should, find out who your state lawmakers are. This is not a partisan issue. There are dramatic differences between different candidates in the primary on both sides who are running on this issue of criminal justice. So find out who your state elected officials are. And I think it's too late to request a ballot now, but if you have a primary ballot, don't forget to mail that in.
Thank you. Can I get a big round of applause?